What's going on, everybody? This is Thomas, the Genie Ninja Stillings here, and you are watching a 222 production.
Thank you, Mr. Stillings. Much appreciated. Hello, my name is William from 222 Productions, and I am here to talk to you about the American Ninja Warrior Season 12 Semifinal number 2. In, I don't know, 30 minutes or less? Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. But I'm going to start right around now. But before I actually do start, just want to list off a quick update. So, recently I got a new laptop. Hey, it's thinner, lighter, faster, and more expensive than my current laptop. Well, my currently old laptop, I should say. Gotta get used to saying that. But the old laptop served me well for 9 years, almost to the day. I've used the same laptop for video editing, and it has been very slow as a result. And so my hope is that with this new setup, things will come out a much faster setup. But unfortunately, the lateness of this video is partially due to me having to make the transition between computers, as well as some other factors that I'm not going to get into. But hopefully, things will go much smoothly for the finale of this season of American Ninja Warrior. And hopefully, the finale of American Ninja Warrior will be a lot better than this episode, because this episode sucked. Just straight up, it just wasn't very good. And it's crazy because, like, you know, it's the very similar course. You know, very 8 of the 10 obstacles were the same as semifinal 1. There was a few, there was a lot of good competitors competing. Some interesting results. The cutoff point was not as high as semifinal 1, but can't expect these things to be exactly the same. But just the editing, the presentation, and honestly the commentary, all kind of bad. Just overall bad, this episode. And I was just finding myself watching the show, being kind of annoyed at points, being kind of bored at other points, and just being utterly confused at their presentation choices. Let me sprinkle on this little fast fact for you. Of the 14 people who moved on, and yes, it was 14, not 13, 14 people who moved on, less than half of them had their run shown in full. And the presentation of how this was shown was just ridiculous. Like, only, what was it, 6 people, I believe. Only 6 people had their run shown in full. That is awful. Awful editing. And especially, I'm skipping to the end, but the fact that, like, you had Joe Morosky run the final run, and he was trying to beat Lucas Reale's time, who, by the way, they fast forward him, and it's like, gee, I wonder if Joe Morosky is going to beat Lucas Reale's time, because surely they wouldn't fast forward the person who had the fastest time of the night. No, they didn't. So obviously Joe beat Lucas. And it's like, Lucas has gotten a pretty raw deal, because in the qualifier he was 3rd place, just missed the power tower, and now in this one he was 2nd place, and they fast forwarded him both times. He deserves so much better this season than what he's been getting. It is a damn shame. And the fact that, like, so many people who didn't even move on got featured. In fact, I think it's ridiculous that one of the 2 women who moved on got fast forward this episode. It is absurd. It is ridiculous that this happened. Jerry DeRulio moved on to the finals, and yet multiple women who didn't have their run shown in full. What the heck? This was, and there's also just some genuinely disappointing results as a whole. So we're gonna get through some of the behind the scenes stuff out of the way. Drew was in this episode. He failed the dungeon. He did move on. They said Jessie was in 12th place when in reality she wasn't, but they did that to kind of cover up the results. Drew moved on, and I presume he didn't make top 8 once again. But that's what happened. A few competitors, you might notice a few competitors didn't compete in the semifinals. One of them was Rachel Goldstein. She was supposed to be in the semifinals, but for those of you who don't know, they filmed a special for that I presume is going to air when USA versus the World would normally air in that January area, maybe some other time. But to my understanding, it involves the women, and unfortunately, she broke her finger during that. It was filmed in between qualifiers and semifinals, and she had to back out of the competition. So Jerry DeRulio took her spot and actually made the most of the opportunity. In addition, I know for a fact that there are 2 males who did not compete. So some of you may have noticed I didn't pick Ethan Swanson for my predictions video. That was on purpose, because I already knew that he didn't actually compete in the semifinals, but I didn't want to spoil it. I feel like, I felt like Ethan should be the one to tell that story, and he's already said it on Instagram. But the reason is, so for those of you who don't know, Julius Ferguson, aka Black Jules, he had qualified for the semifinals, but unfortunately he tested positive for COVID and thus was taken out of the competition. Ethan was around him, and as a precautionary measure, he was taken out of the competition because he couldn't get tested fast enough, and so he was eliminated. If you had noticed in both semifinal episodes, when he was doing the virtual cheering, he wasn't in a hotel room. He was in his apartment / house, whatever he lives in. He lived, his home. And so you may have noticed that, but that is the reason why he was not there, is that unfortunately he was around someone with COVID, and as a precautionary measure, God, I keep saying that wrong, he was taken out. And according to him, he showed no symptoms, so he doesn't know if he didn't catch COVID or if he did and he was just asymptomatic. But obviously it sucks. It sucks for everyone who got taken out of the competition and couldn't compete. I wish the best for all of them. To my understanding, none of the men were replaced by anyone, and that just might be from a lack of availability because of the whole COVID thing. Like, I honestly believe the whole top, only 14 people moving on, regardless of how many people clear, is purely a COVID measure. And so it kind of, I assume that when the men are being eliminated, because to my understanding, they weren't filmed any sort of special with the men. They were sent home immediately. And so, it's unfortunate, and hopefully they'll be able to come back in season 13 and get another shot. But, we don't know what's going on with season 13. It's too far to look ahead. They said they're casting for it, which is good, but who knows what the format's going to be, because it's all going to depend on what's going on in the world right now. But I'm just going to kind of go through this episode and review it. Like I said, I didn't care for this episode at all. There's just, between the editing choices and some of the results, and honestly, I feel like Man Akbar, especially Akbar, quite frankly, put on a poor performance commentary-wise. Just wasn't into this episode at all. But just going through the course itself, like I said, 8 of the 10 obstacles were the same as semifinal 1. The only 2 that changed was the second obstacle, which is now Spring Forward. That returns for the first time this season. And number 5, which is the return of Slingshot, which we previously saw in the first episode. Spring Forward is an interesting choice because you have Spring Forward and Clockwork back to back, and they're essentially both Lachey obstacles. They're both very similar in terms of skill set. Clockwork a little different because there's extra timing involved, and spring forward is sort of like, your momentum's kind of thrown around because of the springs, but it's a bit weird because they're very similar in what they are. So I wasn't really a fan of that choice. I like spring forward, but I don't like the combination of the two. They start off with Dale Benson, and immediately this is where my problem with the editing had right away. Because, even just going back through my notes, you can see that in the first segment, they always do 2 runs before the first commercial break. But this time, only Verdale was shown. Only 1 run. That was a red flag right there. They talked about how he finally got a buzzer, but unfortunately he went out on the corkscrew instead. And so, did he make it? He did not. Ooh, he's out, yeah. One of the things that I wrote for a lot of people was either that they failed the burn rubber or they were close on burn rubber. Burn rubber was a really tricky obstacle, it appears, this time around. I can't tell if there was any sort of adjustment from the first semifinal, which I'm guessing was filmed first, just based solely on the course. So I wasn't sure what was up with that. Disappointed to see Thomas Stillings get fast forward, but he is moving on, so that is nice to see. Dan Polizzi, I'm glad he got featured with the whole Towers of Power stuff. They mentioned that he should have no problem with any ladder on the salmon ladder when it got to it. And there was that brief moment of, oh, is he going to fail the salmon ladder? No, he didn't fail the salmon ladder. It was just a red herring. He ended up failing the dungeon, but hey, going on the horizontal bit, which is very tough. Vertical pegs like that. But he did good. He's moving on. Megan Martin. She had a big belly flop on burn rubber, and she's out. Just the fact that they showed her so early in the episode, that was immediate red flag for me. And she's once again taken out in the second round. But it's a different format. I don't know if they were expecting more of Megan. Obviously they weren't expecting Jerry to be the second person moving on. This episode was kind of a gift to Jessie Graff, just because some of the, I guess, what would you say, top women or women most expected to do well had gone out early. But yeah, unfortunate for her. Amir Malik was the next full run. They had shown his 2 teammates, Alex Carson, who unfortunately failed Slingshot, and David Wright, who failed the dungeon right beforehand. And I will say this: usually when it comes to these, sympathetic profile pieces on the competitors, usually, I talk about how it doesn't really do much for me, and in many cases I don't like it. But if you remember, every once in a while, there is a profile piece that does get to me, and this is one. This is one I think they did very well, and I have no problem with how they handled it. Basically, he has, I hope I wrote this down correctly, he had Wolff Parkinson White syndrome. Basically, it was an issue with his heart. He couldn't do sports, had 7-hour surgery, and now he does ninja. And I think the reason I had no problem with this storyline is a few things. One, I found it genuinely engaging. Two, it was about him and not like a family member or something like that, which personally I think is much harder for me to feel anything out of. Not always, but just on a personal level. And 3, it relates to ninja. And honestly, 4, I think in this case, 4 is it had a happy ending in the end. There's unfortunately with a lot of these run profile pieces, there's not a happy ending. One of the things that I learned last week is that sadly Tyler Gillette's cousin Bill has passed away since the filming of A&W, and my condolences to Tyler and the entire Gillette family. That's awful. And but like I said before, the profile is just, it's not the type of story that I care for in many ways, just because how A&W executes it. It's nothing. It has nothing to do with him. It's just the way A&W does it. But in this case, the A&W did a good job with this, and I really like this. And Amir was someone who I thought was going to do well. I got this feeling that he was going to be a breakout person, and he made it all the way to the spider trap. He had a fast drop on the third corkscrew. I thought he might have lost it right there, but he was able to save it. He made it to the spider trap, and at the third and final set of doors, he fell down, lost traction, and it was heartbreaking. I wanted him to see him clear, but the good news is he's moving on to the finals, and I hope we see good things from Amir. I got high hopes for him. Also, in fast forward, Taylor Johnson failed the clockwork. Oh, and this was sad, and I really wish they didn't fast forward it. Sean Bryan failed the slingshot, shockingly, and is eliminated. It's like, wow. That did not see that coming. But, hopefully he'll be able to strengthen his shoulder even more for season 13. There was Najee Richardson. This was... The run itself, there was a weird moment to it. And I don't know how to, fully describe a few things. So, they started him midway at the slingshot. He was looking good on the course. He did the salmon bladder reverse, which is how he does it. But what was weird was that at the end of the dungeon, getting up to the spider trap, he called for, I don't remember who was on the sideline for him. He called for someone to hand him his inhaler. And they talked before about the asthma thing, and they've brought it up about how it's been a thing, an issue for him in the past. But Najee, I don't know, it's just kind of so weird to see someone actually take an inhaler. And Matt had, I talk about how the commentary wasn't great. Matt had a moment where he's like, oh yeah, an inhaler, it opens up your airways to allow you to breathe easier. And I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm also asthmatic, but I just heard him say that, and I was like, yeah, no crap, Matt. Well, I didn't say crap, I said something else. I'm just like, yeah, no kidding, Matt. Who doesn't know what an inhaler is? It's one of the most well-known forms of medicine. We know what inhalers do. It makes it easier for people with asthma to breathe. You don't need to, the fact that he's explaining this and the way he was explaining is yeah, I get that you're a former doctor, but God, it came across as so condescending. It bothered me. It bothered me. Maybe I shouldn't have, but it did. Anyway, Najee cleared the course. It was really great to see. Great to see Najee doing so much better this year than last year. I don't know if I'd pick him to win the whole thing, because if this inhaler thing is going to become more commonplace, I don't know if he's going to get into the top 8 in finals. We'll have to see. But I'm not confident in that. I got a little bit of time, only a little bit of time before my predictions. Jessica Helmer in Fast Forwards failed clockwork. Joshua Lewis failed the corkscrew. Joshua was one of the people saved by Joe Morosky. Jessica Helmer also was one of the people saved by R.J. Roman. She was the one who failed the first obstacle, made it to the third obstacle, so, improvement. Nice to see a little bit of redemption. Joshua Lewis was saved, made it to the corkscrew. I'll get back to him just in a slight bit. Then they showed the other person that Joe Morosky saved, Will Shalater. And I was so close. I think I was so close to having my prediction be right, because I thought with the editing, I thought they were going to focus on Will, and he was going to get that redemption, and he was going to move on to the finals. But instead, it was Josh. The guy, not Josh, Jeshua. Apologies. Joshua Lewis was actually the one who got saved by Joe Morosky and is now in the finals. I would have never have guessed that because in the qualifiers, Joshua barely even got mentioned on the show. He literally, they fast forwarded him in between Joe Morosky's profile piece and his run in the regional in the qualifier round. And they put all the spotlight on Will Shalater. Bless his heart. Like this is not against him, but they gave Will 2 full run segments, and neither time he finishes in the top 12. But Joshua does finish in the top 12, which would be a great story to tell about how someone was saved from the power tower and is moving on to the top 12, to the finals. That would have been a great story to tell, because if memory serves me correct, he's the only one of the people who got saved who's moving on to the finals of the 8 people who got saved. Granted, technically 7, because one of them had to back out. But I'm just thinking about this, and I'm just like, why wouldn't you tell that story? That's a great story to tell. That's a relatable story to tell. The idea of redemption and second chances and making the most of an opportunity. Why? Why did they completely disregard Joshua? Just show his run. Talk about, oh my God, I don't understand. And then you had this freaking run with Will. Again, has nothing to do with him. It was entertaining enough to watch. He had a close call on burn rubber. Thankfully, he didn't fall there. He ended up, unfortunately, immediately falling on the corkscrew. But the freaking commentary was insufferable during this run, because you had Matt and especially Akbar constantly commentating on Will's appearances. They were saying, "Oh man, look at him with his glasses. He looks like a nerd. He doesn't look like a ninja. He's a biochemist. Why is he so good at doing the course?" And you know what I say to that? You, Akbar. How I am so sick of this nerd stereotype that is in the media. Like, this isn't the 90s and Saved by the Bell, there are 90s sitcoms, portraying the stereotypical nerds anymore. Okay? Nerds, it has been shown, well established at this point, that you can be a nerd and be strong. Frickin' Vin Diesel runs his own D&D group. You're gonna tell Vin Diesel that he doesn't look like someone who should be strong and buff in a Fast and Furious film, and he's also, the voice of Groot, because he's a giant nerd. It was so bad. I hated it. I hated every bit of that commentary. It's just like, of all the stuff that AEW has been preaching over the years, not just this year, about inclusivity and coming together and all the, all the nice stuff they've been talking about with race, the fact that, like, they still resorted to, like, this ostracizing stereotypes of nerds, of, quite frankly, smarter people, which is, like, a bizarre thing to make fun of someone for being, or chemists. It's like, what are you talking about? It was awful. And I think this is where I started checking out, because, like, unfortunately, because, like, I remember they showed, because Lance Pecos was next, and I remember literally nothing about his run, about his I remember nothing about his profile piece, and I missed basically remember nothing about his run. I remember he missed the third wheel of burn rubber almost completely, and he's out. Lauren Ball, Brian Kretsch, David Campbell all got fast forward together. Unfortunately, none of them are moving on. Lauren failed burn rubber, and Brian and David both failed corkscrew, but they weren't fast enough. Alex Nye, they called him Alex Nye, the ninja guy. I don't know if that's his choice or what they were saying. It got annoying really quick, even if it was a fast forward segment. Of just to hear Matt Akbar say this, he failed slingshot, he's out. Tiana Weberly, this broke my heart a little bit. She failed clockwork, she's out. Then they showed Maddie Howard. They did this whole big rigmarole about first responders and being a nurse. And like, look, what she does and what all the first responders are doing are great. But she failed burn rubber. And again, I just want to point out that Jerry DeRulio got fast forward. They showed all these other women, but not Jerry. Tage Harrington was next. Didn't get a profile piece. He looked really good early on because he linked almost all the rungs of spring forward, and unfortunately he just slipped off of slingshot just like that. Slingshot is one of those obstacles where it's not just strength. There's technique and precision, and it can take you out in an instant. It's part of the reason why Sean Bryan lost right there. Like I mentioned, Jerry DeRulio, they showed her failing slingshot, but she's moving on to the finals. Then they showed Michael Torres. They showed him mid-run. He cleared. He looked good. Might be a contender. Who knows? And then in more fast forwards, Ben Mielek. This was again infuriating. I'm gonna lump the last two fast forward segments together because this was infuriating to look at. Ben Mielek failed clockwork. Unfortunately, he's out. RJ Roman, they clear, and he has the new fastest time of the night. Then in the final fast forward segment, they show Austin Gray clearing, and he has the new fastest run of the night. Then they fast forward Lucas Reale, and he has the fastest run of the night. None of them got shown in full, but they showed Devin Harrison, and they kept talking about how, he never hit a buzzer or moved on to national finals. And seeing this, my first thought was, they want us to think that he's moving on or he's going to clear this time. I never thought he was going to clear. No offense to Devin. I saw right through the editing. They focused so much on the clearing, but they had that. It was during the profile piece, just a quick little line of, I've never made it to national finals. And immediately I'm like, that's the storyline for this episode. He's going to be on the bubble. And sure enough, he was. He failed corkscrew, and Joe Morosky was the final person. They showed Devin on the bubble, and I'll give him credit. I said that I wanted them to show who was on the bubble, and they did. And I appreciate it. I wish it wasn't under such crappy editing, however, because like I said earlier, if the current leader for fastest time got fast forwarded, no kidding, it's no wonder that Joe is going to get the fastest time. By the way, I just looked at my notes again. Jessie Graff, I forgot to mention her. She was the second last run they showed. She made it to the corkscrew. Wasn't fast enough to get the normal top 12, but she was the best woman by far because she's the only one to even make it to the back half this time around, unlike the first episode where both women made it to the back half. But this episode was just insufferable at times. And to cap off a bad episode with bad editing and bad commentary, it featured Akbar calling Joe the dad bod ninja. Now, part of that is because they mentioned that, Joe put on some weight. I think it was like 15 pounds because of the pandemic and being a staying-home dad and all of that. And it's like, okay, fine. That's fine. That the profile was fine, him calling him that. But Akbar calling Joe the dad bod ninja is such a giant middle finger on this crap episode. Because Joe, I don't know if you're aware, he lifted up his shirt. The dude looks great still. I wish I could put on 15 pounds and look as good as he does. I can lose 15 pounds and not look as good as he does, quite frankly, because I'm fat. That's how it is. Whenever, God, they did the same thing last season too. That's the infuriating part right now. If Joe, they talked about how, oh, Joe's starting to get a dad bod, and I'm having major deja vu right now because last year I said that's absurd that they would even imply that Joe has a dad bod because the guy looks great. He is in such great shape. It's an insult to actual people with a belly, like me, that we're implying that this well-shaped man who had previously, earlier this year, won the National Ninja League World Championship and is honestly one of the top contenders to winning this season, we're implying he's out of shape, that he's kind of fat by having a dad bod. No! Newsflash, Joe Morosky does not have a dad bod. He's in great shape. Stop it with this tomfoolery and this stupidity. This is crap. This is stupid. I honestly thought that we were going to go the whole season without having a bad episode. But it turns out A&W has always got to have at least one a season. Last year, it was Baltimore. The Baltimore Finals. Oh, I talked about how bad that episode was because I was there. And yeah, some of the other episodes had issues, but that one was crap. This was crap. And it could, and honestly, I think the thing that makes this even worse is that it didn't have to be crap. The editing was so poor in this episode that it took out so much of the fun that could have been had. And I think, quite frankly, this is part of the problem that they've always had with these 10 obstacle courses in the regional finals / whatever you want to call this round for this season, is that the course just takes too damn long to complete. The fastest time was Joe Morosky finishing in 4:59, just a second faster than Lucas Reale, who finished in 5 minutes. Think about it. A fast time is 5 minutes. You gotta edit. You can only fit so many runs. The slowest clear was Najee Richardson. It took him 6.5 minutes to do this. And there have been seasons in the past where people clearing, going as fast as they can, they're getting 7, 8, 9 minutes to clear this stuff. It's getting so much harder for them to fit all these things in. And I don't know. The way they edited it this time around, I know that they can't show people everyone in full. It's why I'm not totally against them showing runs in progress like they did last episode, which they did a lot more last episode. But this was just bad. I'm sorry. I thought this was really bad. This was such a huge drop in quality for this season that it honestly, I'm going to be honest, this is one of those situations where talking about it made me angrier than I was when I was actually watching it. Because it at least with Baltimore Finals last year, you could the editors actually did, I feel the best they could have done. At the end of the day, you had a situation where no one made it past the 8th obstacle because the 8th obstacle, quite frankly, was kind of crap. Not kind of, was pretty crap. But you had quite a few finishers this time around. The results overall were pretty good. There was not as much excuse for the editing and the presentation of this episode. But tell me, the people watching this review, please tell me, is it me? Is it just me? Am I being unfair or unreasonable here? Or was this just a really poorly presented episode? Let me know. I'm genuinely curious if it's just me. But this made me angry. But let's go through some results so I can calm down a little bit. So, no one failed shrinking steps or spring forward, but we had 4 people fail clockwork, 4 people failed burn rubber, 5 failed slingshot. No one failed the warped wall or the salmon ladder, which, pretty good. 8 people failed corkscrew. Once again, the ninja killer of the episode. 2 failed the dungeon, and 1 failed the spider trap. And when I say 2 failed the dungeon, I meant to say 3 failed the dungeon. But they don't want to tell you about that other guy. It was Drew. He's not Voldemort. I'm not afraid of saying his name. Just don't want to praise him. It is what it is. So, and in total, 6 clears at the end of the day. Here are the people moving on. We had Joe Morosky, Lucas Reale, Austin Gray, R.J. Roman, Michael Torres, and Najee Richardson, who all cleared. Then we had Amir Milik, who failed the spider trap. Dale Wright, Dan Paluzzi, and Drew Drescher, who they don't want to show you for obvious reasons, who all failed the dungeon. And then wrapping out the top 12 was Thomas Stillings and Joshua Lewis, who both failed the corkscrew. And for the top 2 women, in first place was Jessie Graff, who failed the corkscrew, and in second place was Jerry DeRulio, who failed the slingshot. And that is everything. This episode was a mess. Thank you all very much for watching either way. Make sure you subscribe and check out my review of the previous episode of American Ninja Warrior. Predictions will be coming very soon. Thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you later. This was a mess. Oh my god.